are fears, Carly, that businesses will actually face large-scale job cuts and that will force employees and employers onto Jobseeker. What are your thoughts on that?
I think that was undoubtedly a very real fear prior to this announcement this week about the extension of JobKeeper. I think most employment lawyers, union representatives and employer associations across the country were bracing themselves for the onslaught of additional job losses at the end of September. I think that the announcements have definitely will slow that, but I think it would be naive to think that there won't still continue to be more job losses. Indeed, they were forecast with the Treasury announcements in October.
Let's talk about the JobKeeper announcement to the extension until the program ends on the 28th of March 2021. Now, although we're going to see lower amounts of payments, do you think it's fairer because it's now going to be means tested with the tier payments?
So I guess in some ways it's fair. I know there was a lot of concern around the fact that there was this flat rate and it meant that people that weren't earning the $1,500 a fortnight were going to be earning more under JobKeeper, and I can understand why there were reservations about that. The catch here is that it isn't being means tested. It's being tested on the amount of hours that were being worked in the 4-week period immediately prior to the 1st of March. And so what that means is that if you were working an average of 20 hours or more, then you will get the full amount of the payment. And if you were earning 20 hours or less, you will get about half of that payment, so $750 in the first decline. And I guess the risk in that is that there's an assumption that those people that were working less than 20 hours in a week were only earning the equivalent of about $750 in a fortnight. That's about half of the minimum wage in a week. And the average Australian earns substantially more than that. So I think there's a real likelihood here that people that were earning $1,500 in a fortnight that are going to drop down are going to suffer extreme hardship. And there may be some risks about forcing them back onto Jobseeker.
And Carly, from the 4th of August, people on Jobseeker will be obliged to apply for at least 4 jobs a month and face penalties if they refuse to work if offered the job. What rights do people have?
I think that look, the reality is that people can and should be applying for jobs. I'm not opposed to people having to go through that process. I think that we have to be real, though, about the fact that unemployment continues to rise and is expected to continue to rise until at least the end of December. We now have more people than ever applying for a very limited number of positions, and the decline in the JobKeeper rates may well mean that employers push off decisions to hire or reduce the amount of hiring that they're doing. So, it's great to ask people to be applying for jobs, and I think that people should be applying for jobs, but I think we also have to be realistic about the fact that it's in all likelihood going to be quite a demoralising experience for a lot of people. It's already been a tough market. It's going to be an even tougher market.
And also, if you are starting a brand new career, you've got to look at study, and there is also the potential for age discrimination, which we've spoken about for quite a lot here on Weekend Edition.
Yeah, that's right. I think that the reality here is that the issues around gender equality, the gender pay gap and age discrimination in the workforce are just going to be heightened. We already know that women were disproportionately affected by this pandemic, being the larger proportion of the workforces that were hit initially and continue to be hit in tourism, hospitality and retail. And we know too that we now have highly skilled workers on the market looking for work in industries that no longer exist. Jenny, you and I were talking about, the likes of pilots and people with really high skill sets that aren't necessarily going to be able to find other work in the work that they are skilled in. And so, when you have more people applying for more jobs, then, the likelihood that discrimination that we already know exists in the workforce, and you've got younger people applying for roles and you've got people that have lost their jobs in their 50s and 60s, we already know that it takes people in their 50s and 60s much longer to find employment. It's absolutely going to be more difficult now. I think everybody needs to have an eye to the future in respect of where the jobs are going to be. There's a lot of good information coming out from the government now, and is indicated in the subsidies that they're prepared to provide in further education. And I think that when you are looking to have to retrain or you're looking to have to find new work, I think it's a brilliant time to take advantage of the subsidised learning that is available, in particular because it's subsidised because that is where the government believes the jobs are going to be in the future.
And just quickly, Carly, Education Minister Dan Tehan, he announced after the 19th of July that the childcare subsidy recipients and sole traders running childcare services won't receive the $1,500 fortnightly payments for work. This is going to affect so many people.
It's extraordinary when you consider that. I was reading an article this morning actually about the fact that parents have already decided to either pull their children out of care or not return them to care, even with the first lot of changes that have been made, because as you can imagine, if they're already on either Jobseeker or JobKeeper, they can't afford to return to childcare, even if it is subsidised. The ACTU is calling for the government to announce universal, free, accessible childcare for Australian workers. They say it would be cost neutral because the people that would be able to return to the workforce accordingly would contribute to the economy. I think that the reality is that unless the government can also announce, major investment into new industries, the ACTU is also calling for a new manufacturing industry. The Labor Party is calling for the government to make announcements and come and meet them and take a bipartisan approach to energy. All of those things make sense because they are the things that give business confidence and allow new jobs to be created. And if the jobs aren't there, then of course people are going to have to start pulling their kids out of childcare, and then there would be real concerns around their school readiness, which is no doubt already going to be suffering with our children having to be homeschooled for so long.